at the NCAA. So that's what these teams are fighting for. And while only the the first varsity 8, second varsity 8, and first varsity 4 count for that NCAA bid, of course, for the Big 10 championship, everybody counts.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the teams that don't get that automatic qualifier, it will come down to the finish of those top 3 boats.
Yeah.
So all the coaches are going to be checking with, what's happening on the West Coast, what's happening on the East Coast, and everybody's checking their phones all the time to see, who did what, and they know where they were seated going in. So it's going to be
it's
exciting.
seeding. It's also kind of like relative results as well,
Absolutely.
because like if you had an incredibly competitive race like that last one we just saw, and like say that happens in the later races, that could maybe sway some of the selectors. Be like, that was a pretty deep pool that those athletes had to battle. So that is something that all the selectors take into account for that next step out of the conferences into their national championships.
Absolutely.
So next race up, we've got the third varsity 4s lining up. As we look at them here, as we're panning around to the side, the lane closest to us in lane 1 is Wisconsin.
Okay.
Lane 2, Indiana. Lane 3, Rutgers. Lane 4, Ohio State. Michigan in lane 5. Lane 6, Iowa. Lane 7, Minnesota, and Michigan State in lane 8.
Again, great conditions up at the start. I don't know if anyone's noticed, we've got the coxswain in the bow of the boat for these 4s.
Got the best seat in the house for this one.
They do.
It's a really hard job for the coxswains being in a bow loader.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel more. You're being pushed as opposed to being pulled, which is why boat manufacturers put the coxswain up there, because it's faster that way. In an 8, it's not as safe because the boat's so long that you don't know what's going on behind you. But in the 4, you can certainly do that. But they can't see their athletes, so they've really got to trust what's going on and feel what's going on and hear it, listen to it. So it's really a skill. It's also, the 4 is a little bit more challenging in rougher water, but it's the boat's about 45 feet long, 46 feet long relative to the 8, which is about 56, 57 feet long, depending on the manufacturer. So it's a different animal, but it's the same sport.
Yeah.
So we saw a little realignment there with one of the crews backing into the state boat, speaking to the kind of challenging perspective the coxswains in this event have, trusting with the rowers to be able to back the shell into the stake boat, and for that volunteer to be able to hold on to that shell. We have our aligning refs off to the side, making sure that all the bow balls are aligned dead straight across. The shells may be actually even slightly different lengths depending on the different manufacturers. So they're there to make sure that they have as fair a start as possible. Full 2,000 meters, not 19,999.9. Yep, so you can see the little coxswains kind of slung into the bow, sort of like a foot in a shoe here. Kind of. So some of them are sitting out right now as they're getting prepared and locked in, but they will kind of sneak right in there.
Boy, the use of the drone has really made viewing a lot more enjoyable for the sport. I just love these shots. I love being able to see the race, as do the fans.
You can start to see them lock the blades in from flat to feathered. You see a lot more detail that maybe you don't get to see unless you're only stationed up there. You're only stationed at the finish. It's an incredible venue. You can see the straight shot they've got here, the full 2,000 meters, 8-lane buoyed course, looking at the start line. Got their bullseyes on the finish line.
Yeah.
Having a little trouble getting aligned with some of the boats. In international rowing, it's a little bit easier. They've got what's called a boot system. It's a cup basically that comes up out of the water, and holds the bow in place so the rowers don't have to worry about keeping the boat straight. It's a little challenging to get into sometimes, but much easier once you are sitting ready.
Yeah. So you see some little taps of one of the bow athletes of each one of the boats, and
Oh, and they're off.
they are off. You see the flurry of blades and splash, and the third varsity fours are now off. So as we were looking on the screen here on the left-hand side in lane 1, we have Wisconsin, lane 2, Indiana, Rutgers, lane 3, lane 4, Ohio State, lane 5, Michigan, Iowa in lane 6, Minnesota in lane 7, and in lane 8, Michigan State.
I thought Ohio State had a really nice, clean start, really great blade work, get themselves slightly in the lead, but Rutgers has not let them go. They're holding right with them.
It's a really good race.
Yeah.
A good start for all crews.
And sometimes that's why these races will they may not start exactly on time, but it's to make sure that everybody has the best conditions for a start possible. So we are now underway in this third varsity four. It is Ohio State who has the number 1 seed leading into this, which speaks to perhaps their early lead. But look at that fight from Rutgers hanging right in there with them, maybe just a foot or two down.
Yep, and Michigan's right there. And the near shore Wisconsin right now is just a half a foot behind Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
They're 4.
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers is really moving. No, Ohio State, excuse me. No, Rutgers.
Rutgers on Ohio State. They're
There's a lot
both
of
moving.
Yes, they are. Rutgers has made a nice move here in the last few buoy lanes, and they are really moving up into Ohio State.
And Wisconsin hanging in there with Michigan.
Yes, they are.
For that third place position. It is hard to say here, but I think it was Ohio State and then Rutgers, Michigan, and then Wisconsin as they cross that first 500-meter mark. Wisconsin, their bow ball sitting about on the bow woman or between the bow woman and the coxswain of that Michigan boat on the far, or that middle lane 5 boat there that's trying to hang on the tails of that fight between Ohio State and Rutgers.
Yeah, and you've got Iowa, too, not far back from Wisconsin. It looks like right now, it is like a bow ball between Ohio State and Rutgers. This is another phenomenal race. You've got Michigan. They've moved up a seat in that last stint there, and Wisconsin is working hard to stay in contact with Michigan.
And it's a great thing. We were talking about kind of the challenges the coxswains have in this kind of boat class, where they're in a bow-loaded 4, they're snuck right in there. I could see both coxswains actually between Rutgers and Ohio State kind of exchange glances over there. They can see each other. It's pretty intense. They're only about a foot off the water, and they can feel the boat. They can probably hear each other's calls. It's very intense over there. But then Michigan is also in a really good position because that coxswain has perspective on the field. She's able to relay to her athletes, hey, we're only 3 seats down. We have overlap with the fight for first right now. We can push here. Wisconsin, that coxswain's also on this nearer shore, also has a great perspective of this first through third fight, so they know they have overlap. They've got a shot at this. So let's see and keep an eye on them in that near lane. That could turn into something very interesting, but we've certainly got a very good push there by the Rutgers crew. They are now in the lead over Ohio State. Next to them is Michigan and then Wisconsin. Then you've got Iowa over there, and as far as we can tell, Michigan State here in this field as well. So, wow, look at that push from Rutgers. Definitely a fight here as we crossed over that 1,000-meter mark.
Yeah, you can bet that coxswain is excited and intense as they took over Ohio State. That's a great feeling as an athlete. Wisconsin's got to be pumped. They're staying in contact with Michigan. Michigan's moved up a bit on Ohio State, and based off their racing from the past this year, they know how to finish strong. So it'll be interesting to see what happens coming into the last 500. Iowa's still there in the picture. Wisconsin's moved up on them. They were a little bit closer, but they're holding on to that 5th place position. So it'll be, again, let's see how the last part of the race here comes out. Wisconsin's moving up slightly here on Michigan, and Michigan is moving up on Ohio State. Wisconsin has almost got contact with Ohio State.
I think Wisconsin is kind of a surprise here. I think they are pushing this field. They originally were seated 7th in this race, and look at them here in current 4th place position with contact with that Ohio State or that Michigan crew. They're surprised to be here in this competitive position of in striking distance of 3rd place here at the Big 10 Rowing Championships.
Well, and they're sort of off to the side. So, on one hand, that can be a disadvantage because they're not in that, they don't get that sense of, getting drawn up with the leaders. But on the other hand, those other 3 boats might not be noticing them or seeing them. And if they make a move here, they've got a good chance of being able to sort of sneak up on the field.
Yeah, and they really have moved up here.
Absolutely.
In the last 100 meters. You could really see it. Michigan is moving up on Ohio State. Their bow ball is almost on Ohio State's coxswain. Rutgers has created some open water. And the Badgers are moving up. Their bow ball is almost on Michigan's 2 seat. So as BB was saying, sometimes those coxswains may not see some of those outer crews.
And good on the part of Rutgers. They were the Big 10 boat of the week of May 7th, so perhaps a little bit of confidence coming into this race, knowing that they could have real command of this event.
Wisconsin's now moved their bow ball almost to the bow seat of Michigan. Michigan has moved up, and they're about a foot behind Ohio State and almost drawing even. You could see it here. You can sense the intensity. Super exciting. Wisconsin's moved into Ohio State. Wow, last 500, and we've got a barn burner here. This is exciting.
They're in the last 250, the last 250 meters of this race.
And Ohio State, they're saying, no, we're not going to let you come up. They have taken a move here. Look at this. Wisconsin continues to move forward, being on the outside. That's a lot to ask, but they're not going to give up here.
Michigan shortening up their strokes, upping their rate. They look to have overtaken the crew on their side.
You're right. They certainly have. Rutgers maintains the leader here in the last bit. You've got Michigan coming over Ohio State. Will Wisconsin get Ohio State?
They may run out of room. They may run out of room, but they're moving.
They are moving. It depends on the angle here. You've got Rutgers, Michigan moving up. Last bit here, you've got Rutgers and Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin.
Ooh, that is your 1 through 4. What a speedy race there for that second, third, fourth position here. And look at these dragsters putting on the brakes here.
Yep, and Iowa's coming up here. They're finishing, and then you've got Indiana moving up to pass Michigan State, and they did. Unofficially, it looks like Indiana ahead of Michigan State. Minnesota bringing it up here to finish the field here. Another great race. I love seeing how that develops from start to finish. Who jumps out in the lead.
And we see Minnesota rounding out this field for the 3rd varsity fours here at the Big 10 Championships. What a fantastic kind of interesting change up there. And I think we're only going to see more of that as we move through the program, as we see athletes who are more and more experienced. They're used to being in those pressure cooker situations. How are they going to handle the conditions, the different changes of pace? Like we saw Wisconsin outperform their seed. We're going to see a lot more of those things happen as, these different events unfold. But I think Michigan probably had a bit of a spirit about them, as well as they knew that their other, the 3rd and 4th varsity 8s were slated to do very well. They want to add to that team championship point. So that was probably a bit of a call or motivation there in that last 350 meters that pushed them ahead of Ohio State.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what strategy starts to show itself now as we get into more and more experienced athletes, rowing athletes. Every coach and every boat has its own race plan and its own strategy. And some coaches are very specific and their boats do a set race plan regardless of what's going on around them. And some coaches give their coxswains a little bit more leeway of if you find yourself in this situation, do what you think is going to be your best bet to get your boat ahead of who's ever next to you. So I think we'll see that a little bit more and more with stroke rate and when moves are taken and those types of things. It's going to be even more exciting as we go along. Although it's pretty hard to imagine that. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say in the years I've been doing it, this is probably some of the closest racing I've seen in the early races.
Absolutely.
And that's just, again, to see their composure, being down, not giving up, fighting through. That's really something to be proud of, as a parent, as a coach, as a teammate.
And I want to say kudos to the freshman coaches or the first-year coaches and the third four coach as well. Generally, you working with less experienced athletes potentially, or athletes that haven't been able to be on the water this year quite as much, and to be able to have your crew compete and perform with that kind of maturity says a lot about the coaching that they're getting. So kudos to those coaches.
Yeah, some of the scores here have shifted a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
You still got Michigan up at top of 31. You got Rutgers to Iowa's moved up 19. Indiana, Minnesota, and Ohio State all tied at fourth with 18 points. And then Wisconsin has moved up one slot, in Michigan State rounding out both Wisconsin